There's a moment most people never notice. It happens somewhere around 9:40 at night. You've had a day. Not a terrible one, not a great one. And you're sitting there with your phone in your hand and there's a thing you said you were going to do today. You know exactly what it is. It's been sitting in the back of your head since about noon, like a text you haven't replied to, and you don't decide not to do it. That's the thing. You never actually make the decision. You just keep scrolling. And somewhere in there the window quietly closes, and now it's too late to start, and now you're just a person who's tired and going to bed. Then tomorrow morning you wake up and you feel it. That little flinch. That small, specific disappointment in yourself that you've gotten so used to, you barely register it as a feeling anymore. If that's you, I want to tell you something before we get into any of this. You don't have a willpower problem. I know that's what everybody says. Want it more? Stop making excuses. Discipline equals freedom. And some of that stuff is fine as a poster, but as an actual explanation for why you can't get yourself to do the thing, it's wrong, and it's the reason nothing has worked yet. Because there's a study I want you to know about. Back in 2012, a group of psychologists, including Wilhelm Hoffman and Roy Baumeister, did something clever. Instead of asking people to rate their self-control on a survey, they interrupted people at random moments throughout an ordinary day and asked what they were craving right then, and what they were resisting. Now, if discipline were about willpower, you'd expect the most disciplined people to be the ones resisting the hardest and the most often, gritting through it, white-knuckling the day. They found the opposite. The people who scored highest on self-control reported fewer temptations, less internal conflict, and less resistance overall. They weren't winning the fight. They were barely in the fight, which means the thing you've been training for years, forcing and pushing and dragging yourself, isn't the skill. It might not even be the right game. So today I want to walk you through 5 habits that are quietly eroding your discipline. And I'll be straight with you. None of them look like laziness. Some of them look like responsibility. A couple of them are things you probably do because you're trying to get better. That's what makes them so hard to spot. The first one lives in the first 10 minutes of your day, because that's where a lot of this gets set. Your alarm goes off. And before your feet hit the floor, before you've said a word to anybody, before you've done a single thing that required anything from you, you pick up your phone. Notifications. A video. Something mildly outraging. Something mildly funny. A little hit. A little hit. A little hit. Here's why that matters more than it looks. In the 1990s, a neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz was recording individual dopamine neurons in animals while they learned to expect a reward. At first, the neurons fired the moment the reward showed up. Makes sense. But once the animal learned that a light always came before the reward, the dopamine burst moved. It stopped firing at the reward and started firing at the light. The signal walks backwards in time. It leaves the prize and attaches itself to whatever reliably predicts the prize. So think about what your brain has learned. Every single morning you teach it the same lesson. The good feeling comes for free. No effort required. Reach out your hand. Get the hit. And then 2 hours later you sit down at your desk and try to make yourself work, and it feels like walking uphill through wet sand. And you think that's a character flaw. It isn't. Your brain just spent the whole morning being taught that effort and reward have nothing to do with each other. You trained it. Accidentally, unintentionally, but you trained it. The fix is to put a wall between waking up and the first hit. Not a whole morning routine. I'm not going to tell you to journal at 5 in the morning. Just don't let the first dopamine of the day be free. Do one small thing that costs you something first. Make the bed. Fill a glass of water. Step outside for 90 seconds. Then check the phone if you want. And I'll be honest about the cost. The first week feels stupid. It feels like a pointless little ritual that's obviously not going to change your life. Do it anyway. You're not fixing your morning. You're changing what your brain expects the day to be about. The second habit is the most damaging thing on this list, and almost nobody talks about it. You end every session by beating yourself up. Picture the last time you actually did force yourself. You dragged yourself to the gym, or you sat down and white-knuckled 2 hours of work you'd been avoiding for a week. How did it end? Almost never with satisfaction. It ended with you closing the laptop and thinking, that was rough. I barely got anything done. I'm so far behind. Tomorrow I need to do twice this. Here's what just happened, mechanically. There's a researcher named Robert Eisenberger who published work in 1992 on something he called learned industriousness. His core idea is that effort isn't just a decision, Effort is a sensation. It has a texture in your body, the heaviness in your chest before something hard, the tightness behind your eyes, the pull toward the door. And because effort is a sensation, it can be conditioned, just like a smell or a sound can be conditioned. When effort is repeatedly followed by something good, the sensation of effort itself starts to take on reward value. The heaviness stops registering as pain and starts registering as a signal that something good is coming. Now flip that around. Every time you finish a hard session and immediately follow it with self-criticism, you're running a rep that teaches your nervous system that effort reliably predicts feeling terrible about yourself. You are conditioning. You've just been doing it backwards. And this is why, and I want you to really sit with this, the people who have tried the hardest are often the ones who now feel the most physical resistance to starting. It isn't that they're weak, it's that they've run the most reps. Their brains have learned the lesson extremely well. So never end on the wreckage. The last 30 seconds of any session is the part your brain files. Stop closing the laptop mid-spiral. Deliberately finish on something small you can complete. One clean sentence, one easy set, one tiny task ticked off, and then stop on purpose while it still feels okay. And whatever you do, don't audit the session while you're still inside it. The evaluation can wait. The association can't. Your ego is going to hate this, by the way. It feels like you're letting yourself off the hook. You'll want to do the guilt thing, because the guilt feels like accountability. It isn't. It's just a rep of the wrong lesson. The third habit is the notebook. You know the one. The clean pages, the new system, the color coding, the template you spent 4 hours setting up, the workout split you researched for a week before doing a single rep. Here's the uncomfortable part. Planning feels incredible. It feels productive. It feels like you're finally getting your life together. And that feeling is real, but it's not coming from progress. It's coming from the fact that when you plan, your brain gets to picture the finished result without paying for it. You get the satisfaction of the outcome, in advance, on credit. And your brain, which remember is just a prediction machine, takes note. It learns that opening the notebook produces a good feeling, and doing the actual work produces strain. So guess which one it steers you toward next time. That's why you can have 12 pages of beautiful plans and 0 completed weeks. It's not that you're bad at following through, it's that the planning already paid you, so the follow-through has nothing left to offer. There's a sneakier version of this, which is research. Watching videos like this one. And I'll be honest with you about that, because if you watch this whole thing, feel a jolt of clarity, and then do nothing, you've just run this exact habit on my content. I'd genuinely rather you paused right now and did 2 minutes of the thing than finish the video feeling inspired. So cap the plan. 10 minutes, 1 page, no design. Then a hard rule. The plan doesn't exist until you've done the first rep of it. Not the first week. The first rep. Write the plan, then immediately do the smallest possible version of the first item on it. Right then, before you close the notebook. Your plans are going to get uglier as a result. Less complete, less satisfying to look at. That's the trade. Beautiful plans are a symptom, not an asset. The fourth habit is that your entry point is too big. Here's something worth understanding about resistance. Your brain doesn't actually resist work. It resists the anticipated size of the work. Write the chapter triggers the flinch. Open the document and write 1 sentence doesn't, because there's nothing there to dread. But most people do the opposite. You've got an all-or-nothing threshold sitting in your head. If I can't do the full hour, there's no point. If I can't do the whole workout, I'll go tomorrow. If I can't clear the whole inbox, why start? And that threshold means you've made starting expensive. So on the 80% of days when you're tired or busy or slightly off, you don't do a small version, you do nothing. And doing nothing is also a rep. There was a study out of University College London in 2010 that tracked people building new daily habits. And it turned up 2 things worth knowing. First, the automaticity, the point where it stops requiring a decision, took around 2 months on average, with a huge amount of variation. Some people got there in 3 weeks, some needed most of a year, but the finding I actually want you to hold on to is the second one. Missing a single day did not break the curve. It didn't reset anything. The people who failed were the ones who quit, not the ones who slipped. Sit with that if you've ever thrown away a good month over one bad Tuesday. So shrink the entry until saying no to it feels ridiculous. 2 minutes, 1 page, 1 set, 1 email. And here's the part people skip. The entry point is the whole commitment. If you stop there, it counted. Fully. No asterisk. You'll usually keep going because starting was the expensive part, but the day you don't keep going still counts, and that's the entire mechanism. You're not trying to do more. You're trying to make the streak unbreakable so the association has time to form. It will feel insultingly small, especially in the first few weeks when you're comparing yourself to the version of you that used to do 4-hour bursts and then vanish for a month. Small is the point. Small is what you can repeat, and repetition is the only currency this system accepts. The fifth habit ties everything together, and it's this. You keep negotiating with yourself in the moment. Every day you're having a negotiation. It happens at the alarm, it happens at 2 in the afternoon, when you're deciding whether to open the laptop or open a tab. It happens at 9:40 at night with the phone in your hand. And here's the problem with that negotiation. You're not the one showing up to it. Not the version of you that made the plan, anyway. The you at 9:40 p.m. is tired, depleted, and looking for relief. That version of you loses. Not because they're weak, but because they're tired, and tired people make tired decisions. So the mistake isn't losing the negotiation. The mistake is having the negotiation at all. Remember that Hoffman's study from the top of the video. Follow-up work on the same idea found something specific about how high self-control people actually operate. Given the choice, students with higher self-control were more likely to pick the quiet room over the social one before any studying started. They weren't resisting more temptation. They were arranging their lives so they encountered less of it. That's the whole move. Every decision you make about your environment while you're calm is a decision your tired self doesn't have to win. Phone in another room, not face down on the desk. Clothes laid out the night before. The app deleted instead of resisted. The gym bag already in the car. The junk food not in the house. Not because you can't handle it, but because there's no reason to spend a limited resource on a fight you could simply have not scheduled. And I want to name something here, because a lot of people resist this one on principle. Removing temptation feels like cheating. It feels like admitting you're not strong enough. But you're not being weak by designing the room. You're doing exactly what the strongest self-regulators in the research already do. They just do it so early that it never looks like discipline. The catch is that it requires planning while you feel fine, which is precisely when you're least motivated to bother. Sunday afternoon you doesn't feel the problem. Wednesday night you does. So the only real trick is remembering that Sunday you is the one with the power. That's the 5. Free dopamine before you've earned anything. Ending sessions in self-criticism. Planning instead of starting. Entry points that are too big. And negotiating with yourself in the moment, instead of deciding in advance. Now let me tell you the thing nobody in this corner of the internet wants to say out loud. The work doesn't become easy. If you do all 5 of these perfectly for 6 months, hard things will still be hard. Heavy will still be heavy. Nobody gets to a place where they bounce out of bed thrilled to do the difficult thing. That video is a lie, and it's why so many of these promises leave you feeling worse than before you clicked. What actually changes is quieter than that. What disappears isn't the difficulty, it's the argument. The 40-second negotiation at the alarm. The little courtroom that convenes every single time you sit down. The daily referendum on whether you're the kind of person who does this. That's what goes quiet. And on the other side of it, effort starts to feel less like punishment and more like a texture you recognize. Like the ache after a hard session that you weirdly miss. It doesn't feel like pleasure exactly. It feels like it belongs to you. Over a century ago, William James wrote that the whole point of building habits is to make your nervous system your ally instead of your enemy. Not to overpower it. Not to declare war on yourself every morning and lose by 9:40 at night. Just to get the automatic part of you, the part that already decided before you woke up, working on the same side as the part of you that wants a different life. That's all discipline ever was. So if you've been carrying the belief that you're just a lazy person, I hope this loosened it a little. You weren't broken. You were trained by a setup that only ever clapped at the finish line, and training can be redone. Which one of the 5 is actually yours? The free morning dopamine, the self-criticism at the end, the planning loop, the oversized entry point, or the in-the-moment negotiation? Tell me in the comments and be specific, because I read them and I'm curious which one people land on most. My money's on the second one. And if this made something click, send it to the one person you know who's been fighting themselves at 6 in the morning for years and blaming their character for it. They don't need another motivational speech. They need to know it's conditioning. I'll see you in the next one.